Hello, my name is Frank Gallagher. I am an editor at Ilex, and we're here for the second Ilex Instant Live event. I'm joined via satellite by Michael Freeman, who is on location in China at the moment. Michael, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can certainly hear you.
So, where exactly are you? What are you doing in China?
I'm in Yunnan, which is the southwest province of China. It's becoming increasingly popular because of the scenery, the ethnic minorities, lots of both. And in fact, I'm in a small town, an old town, which called, about 700 years old, which used to be on the tea horse road. The tea was being carried up by pack train from the far southwest of China, near Burma, up to Lhasa, and this is one of the trading posts. And I'm leading a workshop, a photo workshop.
How long have you been there?
I've been here now 6 days. Yeah, 6 days, that's right. And we're nearing the end of it, and I have 10 participants from pretty well all over. We got some people from Jakarta, Indonesia, from Kuala Lumpur, from Singapore, Moscow, and London.
Oh, very cosmopolitan.
Yeah, and the whole thing's nearly a week. So this is pretty
So what goes on in one of your workshops? Have you been doing these for a while?
Well, I've done workshops. They seem to be increasingly popular to do and to take. And I've been doing them sporadically for a couple of years. But each one has always been organised by somebody else. I mean, somebody else's initiative. The last one I did was for Barclays Bank Wealth Management, also in China. But this is slightly different because we're going to make a regular thing of it. It's a friend of mine who's an architect with a practice, a Singaporean architect with a practice in Shanghai. And he's taken over, I wish I could show you, I don't know. So I can swing this round. Maybe you can't see very much, but there are some farmers out there doing some work. He's taken over this old courtyard farmhouse in this little old town with cobble lanes and a little canal running through it, and converted it beautifully because he's a very good architect. I've known him for quite a few years because I photographed his works for in the city for books about architecture and design in China. So he's converted this into, I guess, what you'd call a designer adventure lodge. It's called the Bevu. That's the plug. But it's really very nice. But what they specialise in is cultivating contacts with the local communities, particularly the minority groups.
I was going to ask how much do you integrate the local? I mean, do you use local guides in your workshop? And
yeah, well, in fact, the initiative comes from Shin, my friend, and we're going to do this spring and autumn. And the Bevo, this place here, they're particularly concerned about involving local people because particularly up in the mountains and the hills around here, it's quite a tough life and a low income. They were telling me that in the Yi villages up about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here, the average wage is 3 RMB. Oh dear, that's 33p, so 40p a day. So so it's not a lot. Of course, where there's a lot of tourism, and the town near here is Lijiang, it's a different case. But then it just gets crazily developed.
So I understand that you were fortunate recently that you actually just got back from a special occasion of sorts.
Yeah, no, it was true. It truly was amazing. And what had happened was that we had our usual plan worked out. A couple of days hiking down Tiger Leaping Gorge, and unfortunately, I have to come back up, which is the real problem. It's very deep. I mean, depending on how you calculate it, it's the deepest of one of the deepest canyons in the world.
Wow.
But when we got back, the teacher from a Yi village that these people here are trying to work out a way of having a kind of outpost for people to go and stay for a night. Came by and said that this is like 3 days ago, was it 4 days ago? An 80-year-old lady had died in one of the villages, and I'm not quite sure why it was going to be so big. This is really one of the biggest gatherings for a long time of all the other Yi from different villages, from different valleys and hills. And we were invited. I mean, this very, very rarely happens because this is a funeral, and of course, well, actually, we'll come on to that in a minute because funeral in this case isn't by any means solely an occasion for mourning. There's a lot of other things go on there too. So we dropped our plans and we all went up there, and it was just amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And
so
the people
from a Western perspective, anyway, it seems like a delicate cultural situation. Do you feel intrusive in that situation, or did your guests feel intrusive? Or
well, I mean, I led them through it, and I was led through it by teacher Liu Liaoshe, because he's part of the community from a different village. Yes, of course, you feel intrusive, but the feelings are less important than knowing the protocol in situations like this. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm by any means an expert, but I did study anthropology as part of my geography degree, and since then I've done a number of assignments, notably a 3-month assignment, a book on one of the hill minorities, in fact, to the southwest of here. So you have to observe certain forms, but it's relatively straightforward. Obviously, you need to apply common sense and realize, be sensitive. So the first thing we do is we go and we're introduced to the family, to the sons and the sister-in-law, and nobody touches a camera. Of course, these you leave behind. Well, you leave outside. And we sat, we talked. We had already brought with us the appropriate gifts, which in this case are cigarettes for the men, Baijiu, which is, I guess you call it the local vodka, except it's rather stronger, it's a bit more than 50 degrees, which, how shall I say, it's not like going to the pub. I mean, drink has a ritual. I mean, people do, drink for the pleasure of it, but the passing around drink and cigarettes is one of the forms of exchange and recognition in these places. And apart from that, one of the rituals for the deceased, who is lying on a platform in a temporary enclosure within the courtyard. I think I've sent you some pictures there.
Yes, we have a couple pictures. We can put up. We have the first one with the mountains in the background.
Okay, yeah, the mountains in the background. Well, that gives you the context. And in fact, one of the things I'm concentrating on in this workshop. So this is a particularly. Lucky is not the right word when somebody dies, but it's extremely appropriate. Is that I'm teaching about photo stories, storytelling with photographs. So anyone who knows the way that picture stories work realizes that one of the things you absolutely need is an establishing shot.
Right.
So the temptation, of course, is when you're in a situation like this, you're perhaps closing in a bit, but you do have to stand back.
But especially if you have a backdrop like that, I think it helps.
Exactly. But in fact, we had to stand up on one of the surrounding sort of platforms around the courtyard to see it. But just to return to the protocol, so you make the introductions, you talk, you take tea, and then ask what, when they say, fine, you're welcome, and you can take photographs. And I say, right, what should we not take photographs of? And it turned out to be just one thing, which is the face of the deceased, which is covered in cloths, but each time a new group arrives from some miles away, they're all walking, and preceded by the women in these amazing costumes.
Yes, we have a couple of shots of those too.
Yeah, well, what you can see with that overall shot, you see there's a guy, he's called Lala, who is carrying along a white cloth on a pole. Yeah, and when a new group arrives, they're welcomed with firecrackers, and then he dances them in to the courtyard. I don't think I've given you a shot of that. And then within the courtyard, they start keening, wailing. And this is not the only society that does that. And the women then go into the enclosure, which is made of bamboo, woven bamboo, and there again they continue to weep over the body, and of course, there are real tears. So I'm very concerned about this and saying, are you sure about this? Well, and the answer is yes, it's fine. Obviously, you keep back,
right?
But then at one point, then the senior woman in the group bends down and lifts the cloth covering the face, to kiss the face, and that was the one thing that we should not see. It was actually to see the body. But then, my group was really very good, but we'd all talked about this anyway. Before we even approached the village, we got out of the vehicles, because it took nearly 2 hours to drive there. And I said, well, look, this is what we have to do. And the temptation to take photographs immediately will be great. You have to resist it. We're there for the day. It will all be fine. But be sensitive. But one of the things that then happens is that as you're accepted, and you talk to people, and when you're not shooting, you sit with them. And of course, there's a common language of Chinese, not that I speak Chinese. But I noticed, all of our group were at some point showing pictures from the camera to people. And I'm keeping a very careful eye on expressions and things like that. And actually, it was very rewarding at the end of it, when I went with the teacher to say goodbye and repeat condolences. They were very happy, actually, because one of the things is a wake like this. It's not simply a tearful occasion. It's a celebration. It's partly a celebration of the life, and it's like a wake anyway. And it's also performing the necessary rituals to send the person onto the next plane, the next world, properly, and hence the ceremonial aspect. So they felt that having a group of foreigners there who were respectful was actually enhanced the occasion. That's fascinating.
So you begin. And before all this, you were invited too, because you had a local guide. Yeah. So that's how you found out about it. Then, before you begin photographing, you observe any local rituals and become welcome. Then, when you can begin photographing, keep respectful distance and And it's interesting that you ask, what can you not photograph, and assuming that everything else is fair game?
Yes. Well, just to make sure there are no assumptions
and big tattoos that would.
You can photograph anything, and they may be assuming that of course you wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
You need to establish things.
Right.
But it worked well. And my new thing with workshops is, and I don't do many, is that at the end of it we make a book. Now print on demand. That's what it's called, isn't it? Print on demand. Yep. Printing on demand. It works very, very well now, and you can really do it properly. And I realised that I read last year, it was my Barclays client who actually came up with the idea, and I could have kicked myself for not thinking about it. You really need an outcome. You have to have a result at the end of the workshop.
Yeah, a product to take home.
Yeah, and it's obviously to a large degree a memory. Just to recover the memories of the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And all the good times. But what I've done is to convert it a little bit into a sort of team effort through the 6 days, in that we're all working together as a shooting team and as an editorial team to make this book. And of course now, with the surprise of this funeral, that's going to be a good half of the book. There'll probably be 50 pages of the entire book. So 20 some of them. And we've been working out between us. We have these long talks. They go on till, I go to bed at 11, but some of these guys have been up processing until 2 in the morning. But that will win.
So that feeds in. I have a few questions coming in from some people on Twitter, and the first one from James is: do you do any editing on the road, or do you wait until you get home? So it sounds like each night you're processing the day's photos, which leads into a book.
Yes. Normally, let's say we're not producing a book. Let's say I'm just on normal assignment. Then what I normally do at the end of the day, or the end of the day shoot, is I do my housekeeping, basically. And just as you have the dailies in the movie business, then it's pretty much the same thing with this. So I download caption, which is a real chore, but it's best got over and done with right at the start.
Well, it's fresh in your mind, too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, it's manageable. I mean, coming back and looking at, thousands upon thousands of digital files that need to be edited isn't so pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And then backing up. And then I do a review, because, as you said, things are fresh in your mind. Now, editing, which is something, it's quite an important part of my workshops, this, is something that's hardly ever taught, because people assume, well, it just happens. All these years I've been shooting for magazines and books means that I've been exposed to this, and in a sort of just on the job training kind of way, but I formalised it rather. And editing is actually it is a part of photography, in that photography, unlike painting, you always take more pictures than you're going to end up with. Now, there's many different ways of doing this. It may simply be that you're trying to take only good pictures, but obviously there's a range of excellence. There's another way, which is, say you're in a situation where you've got some sort of repetitive action, like somebody doing something, or a situation where it's not exactly repetitive, but things are not moving very, very fast, like a market. Mm-hmm. And some trading going on, a particular part of it. Then, what you do is, once you've decided that you've got a worthwhile shot in front of you, you take the picture. But if it's involving people, particularly, you would probably wait and see if it improves. if it improves in terms of lighting, for example, or if it improves in terms of gesture or expression. Imagine two people talking across the street, and it looks good, it makes a picture. Then you might be thinking, well, that picture was all right, but look a bit static. But every so often, one of them starts to, gesticulate with their hands. Capture that. So, in other words, you quite often end up, particularly in this sort of unstructured documentary photography, with a block of pictures which are aimed to produce just one, because you're simply trying to improve on something that you've got already. It's okay, but you think you might be able to get it better. So it's very useful. At the end of the day, is you do remember what you were thinking at the time much more easily than later. So what I always do is, in the program I use, I just, I rate them with stars. I mean, the ones that I thought I was aiming for and are the most successful of the day. And then forget about it. Maybe a month later, I'm on the road for a month this time, because I'm then going to Myanmar. When you get back, you have a very different perspective. And sometimes that perspective is better than the immediate hot one. The cool look may be better. But equally, the first judgment may be the one that works. But at least you give yourself the chance of looking at the same take, the same set of images, with two different frames of mind, if you like.
You mentioned your software that you use. How do you go about producing these books? I mean, I know that, for instance, Adobe Lightroom has a new export to book module. Do you use? How do you end up putting the books together after the editing is done?
Don't use Lightroom. I use Photoshop, just because I've always used Photoshop. How do you produce a book? Oof, that's a tall order. I start by thinking it through. I use an analog device called a notebook with a pen, and I scribble my notes, and I've been doing that this time. I haven't got it actually right with me, but you first of all, you're making even right up to the point of shooting what's called a photo script or a picture script, which is simply a kind of wish list. It's not very simple. I mean, you can use it, in fact, to help think through how you're going to use the pictures, and that's the genesis of it. And then with a book, which is quite a big animal. I mean, this book I did on the Tea Horse Road, which is why I come back to this region. It was 300 pages, a bit more than 300 pages, and a bit more than 300 pictures. So,
what about the smaller type of book that your students at the workshop are putting together?
Yeah, okay. So, well, I'm in the middle of starting it right now, and I'm guessing, because you can choose a number of pages, but at a pinch it'll be 50 pages, I think. So I know I need certain things. I need to. You need a title page. Anyway. When I say title page, I was wrong. I meant title spread. The unit, the visual unit in the book, as well as you're obviously not, it isn't a page, it's a spread. When you open it, you've got the 2 pages. So we need a title, and that should, have a strong image on it. The next one in these is a group portrait. You always have to have a group portrait and identify who's who. So that takes up a spread. Then I'm going to need pictures of people, of everyone shooting and having fun and crazy things. You know what Chinglish is. The sort of
half English, half Chinese.
Well, no, it's unfortunate English, which has been just taken straight out of the dictionary. I love the one when we landed in Tanchong last December with the Barclays Group, and this is China Eastern Airlines, and the top of the steps says, "Carefully fall and slip down." No,
So there's room for humor and personality in the books too, which is gives some context.
So there's that kind of picture. So I know I need to reserve some spreads for that. And then I start to think, well, am I going to do this? How am I going to break it up? And the obvious way is by time. The narrative order is day 1 through 6. Here it's going to be slightly different, because I'm going to set off the last half of the book for the funeral. And there, what we've done, and we've talked through this, is to make a list of all the kinds of pictures that we should have to explain what's happening.
Uh-huh.
So the most important is timeline. So, and everyone was taking notes and that. So when we get together, we between us, we worked out exactly what happened in time order. We've missed the cremation because we had to come back. That was the following day.
Uh-huh.
But there was so much happening within this day that it makes a very good unit.
Uh-huh.
So, timelines. And then you have... I've got one spread, because we were talking about this, the expressions on certain people's faces. And when we got everything assembled from everybody, everyone's best shots, he really went through... There are people weeping. There's some people with quite somber expressions. There are some laughing. There are people in heated conversation, because this is also a gathering of the communities that they only normally get together on, maybe twice a year to meet. So I'm actually going to have a spread which I'm going to title A Range of Emotion. So I think, it's important. When you're there, you realise that this is in some ways an older way of dealing with death that we used to have.
And that's what makes it a more interesting subject, not just the costumes and the location, but actually the meaning of these rituals and the rituals themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have purpose to the photography. So, I mean, we could go on forever about how you do a book, but I think at the core of it, the heart of it, it's realising that you're using the photograph for a purpose, and that drives the event. You still there, Frank?
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, sorry.
Are you there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So let's keep going through some questions. I think we've covered books in general. Lucy asks, what's the biggest challenge in running a photography workshop in a foreign country? Is there one particular thing that comes up, or is there one particular story of a problem that you ran into and had to resolve? I imagine there's a lot of thinking on your feet.
Yes, I haven't actually had a serious problem on any of them, but it's a lot easier to conduct a workshop than just to set one up. That's the real issue. Somebody, this is the world of tour operators and travel agents. Somebody's got to actually do all of this, and
the logistics are the big part, right?
The logistics of it, yeah. So, but from my point of view, it's making sure that everyone is catered for, basically. I do a lot of planning. I mean, everything is researched as well as possible, so that everyone knows what to expect, and everyone's asked to do certain things. Like, we start with a portfolio review, which sounds rather grand. I try not to make it sound too formal, but basically what it is, I say, look, let me see your half dozen or so favourite pictures. The reason is, I can then understand a bit better what it is you like doing and what level you're at, etc. So it's not a case of, not a competition or anything. There's quite often a sense of nervousness among some participants, thinking Is my work going to be good enough? Well, I try and make sure right from the start that we get everyone together, and that usually happens anyway, that people start to join together and work together as a team. But the idea that it's not, this is nothing to anguish about.
Right.
We're all taking pictures in our own ways.
Right.
So what else is challenging? Really, as you said, it's thinking on your feet. There's a lot of executive decision has to be taken. Something comes up, change the schedule. You realise that somebody might be feeling a bit uncomfortable, or you wonder if they're a bit too quiet. Are they all right? You have to ask a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Quite often people will be shy to tell you that they'd rather spend more time doing this and less time doing that. But generally, by the time we've actually got all these people here, and people coming from big distances, all on the same day, at that point it becomes really quite simple. The other thing is you've got to have a theme. You've got to be saying what you're teaching.
And this is a photographic story, right?
Yes, that's one of the that's really the core of it. Is how I'm teaching at the same time I'm talking about light. So I'm doing on light and on storytelling, because the general structure is you have time back at base, and I try not to make it like a classroom where we do portfolio reviews. We come back, download, select, and I go through. I make a critique, a positive one always, and I also give talks, so with slides and video, some audio. So there's that sort of mixture, but that has to be balanced against the shooting activity going out. And on this trip, there's been so much to shoot. We've been running out of time back here at the lodge, but that's good. I mean, anyway, I always keep monitoring and seeing how people are feeling about things. That was a funny sound.
That was a funny sound. Okay, I think we got one more question coming in from Tara. Your workshop. What made you choose this particular location? You mentioned that it was on the T-Horse Road, which you've done a book about. I imagine there was a connection?
Yes, indeed. Because the T-Horse Road actually ran. It doesn't run anymore, which doesn't stop it being being promoted by all the tourist agencies and the government, even though it stopped functioning in about 1950, but it started in the 7th century. Anyway, but this is over 3,000 kilometers of trails and roads, some of which are now built over, some are expressways, some are still used. We have horses here, and the horses are great. I mean, these are ponies and mules. They're quite small, well, not exactly like a Shetland, and incredibly sure-footed. And more for fun than the fact that we were exhausted, we used some of these horses to come up from the canyon, from Tiger Leaping Gorge, and it's great. I mean, it's really so impressive. You're going up very steep switchback paths, which are rocks basically, and the animal, you can hardly believe how good and sure-footed they are, which is a very good job because the drop is quite. You feel a little bit exposed on one side, but yeah. So I've had such a good time shooting. I had such a good time shooting this book. I mean, I spent 20 weeks at it over 2 years. I had to come to an end sometime, but it's so varied here. The history is fascinating. The people, the minorities, so many of them. The scenery, of course, is not only great, but it varies from well, you can imagine the far southwest. It's subtropical up to the high plateau of Lhasa. So I'm always comfortable coming back here.
Cool.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I keep worrying that someone's going to go.
Well, I know. I think we were lucky to have a pretty solid connection, considering your remote location. I imagine you've got some workshop stuff to attend to, so I won't keep you for too long. But thank you very much for satelliting in, and good luck with the rest of your workshop.
Yeah, great. Okay, good talking to you, Frank.
Good talking to you too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.